Oh, it hides it automatically. It's interesting. Fix it. Oh man, stop sharing. It's recording. Share screen. And we're going to Hey Spartans, Mrs. May here, and here's your video today, Thursday, October 8th on risk factors. So we talked about health influences, and now we're looking at some risky behaviors and how they're going to impact your health triangle. So you'll want to pause this video for the quick right, which is describe how some health risk behaviors can influence the likelihood of engaging in unhealthy behaviors. So that could be a personal health risk that you have. It could be a behavior that you're already partaking in that might lead to further unhealthy behaviors. So here's one example that I find super common in middle school, especially sixth graders coming out of elementary school where they don't have as much experience with their own health conditions yet, is I think health risks such as asthma can influence us to make choices such as not participating in physical activity. And unhealthy behaviors such as not being physically active are often a result of negative experiences in the past. Personally, Mrs. May is, I have sports-induced asthma, and so I really try to work with my sixth graders, especially on understanding their experiences with their asthma and learning to kind of navigate the feelings that they experience when they have a minor or major asthma attack and working to control that, as well as to advocate and say, hey, Mrs. May, like it's acting up a little more today. And then we usually have a discussion during PE about like one-on-one, okay, well, what can we do? So instead of getting rid of physical activity altogether, we work on, finding ways that you can still be physically active, but still support, any kind of compromised health conditions you might have. So go ahead and pause this if you haven't already. And then on the next slide, we'll start our lesson. Here we go. So we're talking the risks and consequences. So we talked about health influences such as getting sleep and eating right, being physically active and all that. So the one thing we want you to understand is that every decision you make in life and in school will have a consequence. It's just up to you if it's going to be positive or negative. Okay. So when you think about doing something, you need to think about the consequence. So skateboarding is really fun, but there's a consequence if you decide you look cooler without a helmet than if you want to stay safe by wearing your helmet. So I feel safer wearing a helmet because then I can do more tricks, which I can't do a ton of tricks. Don't ask me to show you guys because I'm not the most coordinated on a skateboard, but I do love longboarding. And then your consequences can be short-term or long-term. So Mrs. May got lucky the one time I chose not to ride, not to wear a helmet while I was riding my bike. And the short-term effect was a car was driving through a parking lot as I was riding my bike through the crosswalk, and they decided that they were in such a rush they weren't going to stop. Luckily, I had enough reaction time to kind of hop off my bike, and she just kind of ran into the pedal on my bike, and it ended up like ripping her license plate up. And it damaged my bike instead of me. So short term, I just had to find a new way to go to my classes in Boise. But the long term, had she hit me and I had not realized that she was coming, I probably could have smacked my head on the concrete really hard. So it just depends on how hard that impact would have been. But sorry about that. Excuse me. So you just have to look at that. So how important is looking cool to your peers in comparison to keeping yourself safe? Okay. And then another thing to think about is if it's a cumulative risk. So COVID is probably the one example that we can all understand because it's so current right now in 2020. I have an underlying health risk, which is asthma. And then I also have a baby under 1, and so I'm taking care of her, which puts both of us at a possibly risked health group. So we're not in the high risk group, we're in the maybe high risk group. But if we expose ourselves too much to outside circumstances, we can compromise our immune systems more than your general healthy person who, doesn't have asthma or isn't relying on their mother for nutrients. So that example being COVID plus any pre-existing conditions puts you at greater risk. Okay. Other cumulative risks could be, you give into peer pressure once over something that you feel is silly, such as wearing your helmet when you do, certain sports or activities. Well, the thing is, it could accumulate, and then the next time they could think that you're silly for, not smoking or not drinking. Okay, it just kind of depends. Or another one, minor lies to parents. That happens a lot in middle school. And so deciding whether, what's important to you, where your integrity stands, what you think is right versus what is wrong. Okay, so let's look at the impact on our triangles. Your textbook specifically talks about in middle school those pressures to try tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs. And while one-time use will not necessarily mean that you're 100% going to become an addict, okay, it could lead to a dependency or an addiction. Okay, it may. It does not mean it's absolutely going to happen, but that also doesn't mean that just because your friends say they're not addicted, that it's not going to happen to you. Every body is different, just like everybody is different. Every body is different in the responses to tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. And then your dependency looks at the mental side of your health triangle, in that you can be mentally dependent. So smokers actually utilize a skill that is common in stress relieving techniques or stress management. And that is when somebody inhales on a cigarette. I don't really have a lot of experience with this, but they usually, from what I've seen, take a nice deep inhale and hold the smoke in, or they let it out. But that same deep breath in and then long exhale out is the same that we use to calm ourselves if something triggers us or we're stressed out. So it's the smartwatches these days, they do a nice deep breath in for like a 3 count, 1, 2, 3, and then exhale 4, 5, 6, and sometimes longer. That same mental and physical coping mechanism for stress management is something that smokers do automatically. When you combine that with the tobacco, that's what leads to that dependency, even though they don't have to. That's the cool thing, is you don't have to keep smoking. That same behavior can be physically done. And then once you start using tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs, you become a user. And that judgment can sometimes lead to problems with family or friends, and at school, that being the social part of your triangle. Here is a teenager pictured, and she's wanting to start a no vaping campaign because she thought she wasn't going to be impacted by the use of vaping. She thought it was healthier than smoking. And then she ended up being hospitalized. So you can look up different pictures on the impact of smoking of any type on the lungs and what vaping does. And it's pretty interesting comparison of a healthy lung versus a vaping lung. Okay, fast food risks. This is not just McDonald's, Taco Bell, drive-throughs. This is your frozen and processed foods as well. So looking at, what happens to your body physically here in the picture on the left when you choose to eat high processed foods that aren't as natural to the earth. So whether or not you eat meat is considered something that is natural. If you go organic, it's less processed. Same with your fruits and your vegetables, your potatoes, which are a source of carbohydrates, rice as well. Okay, thinking about what you're putting in your body and if it's going to have a short-term or a long-term positive or negative effect. And so the picture shows you just some different impacts. They're definitely more of the negative ones. when you eat lots of unhealthy foods. So like a high fat diet with low physical activity, things like that. So in the moment, like I get it. Mrs. May loves to eat, loves eating, especially Italian foods. And while in that short term, my taste buds are so thankful for that food. Okay. The other day I had to make Minimans and their cheeseburger is just juicy and delicious, but that's extra bread that I don't necessarily need. Really delicious cheese, but that upsets my tummy, So in the moment, I am just enjoying a hearty cheeseburger. But long term wise, my body doesn't react as well to it. So for the general person, if you continue to feed those processed foods into your body, the high salt, high sugar, and unhealthy fats, your body starts to crave those. And then there's some, diets, and some are fad diets where they talk about cutting out excess salt and excess sugar and unhealthy fats because they want to help you reset. So Whole30 is a 30-day reset where hopefully you can train your body not to crave these unhealthy foods. And so then you can avoid what's pictured there. So the weight gain, high blood pressure, things like that. And then just think about, you don't have to cut out all your fast food. Okay, I know that convenience wise, it's a lot easier to get fast food, especially when you're on a road trip. Frozen meals are a lot easier, especially for families who are working and have children and they just want to say, hey, there's a meal in the fridge or freezer, like grab it real quick. You just have to remember, is it accumulating with other risks within your family? So everything in moderation is okay. So have your piece of cake, just don't eat the whole entire cake yourself. Are you exercising? Treat yourself, okay? That doesn't mean you want to go work out and then eat a bunch of junk food, but understand, you know what? I've been pretty active today. I can afford a few more calories. And then are you getting enough sleep? Okay. That's one we're not really talking about, but it definitely is one of those other factors that can kind of cause you to spiral if you do too much. Screen time risks. Every single one of us that are online right now are susceptible to this. If we have limited to no physical activity right now, we're spending 6 to 8 hours on a screen. For teachers and people who are working and doing excess work at home to prepare for their next work day, you could be spending 12 hours on your screen, something we weren't doing a year ago. Okay, so you have to think about the positive and the negative impact there. Short term, yay. If I spend a lot of time on my screen and I'm not working out very much, I do a lot less laundry. Whereas I find when I start going to the gym, I need my workday outfit, I need my workout outfit, and then sometimes I need a different outfit. So now I have this excess of laundry. Long term wise, okay, you might find yourself buying bigger and bigger and bigger clothes. But how do you counter that is by increasing your physical activity. So just be aware on this one of your screen time. For all of us, it's increased drastically. As a PE teacher, I've never spent this much time in front of a screen. So I'm definitely trying to get in 3 days of physical activity, whereas when we're in school and in sport, I was working out every day except for the weekends. So just pay attention to that. The mental aspect being your self-confidence when you have to buy bigger and bigger clothes. Just decide what's most important to you. And then actually physical activity, okay, balanced with a little bit of screen time, okay, allows you to focus better. So allow your screen time at night after school to be a reward for spending a little bit of time in physical activity. The more physical activity we have, we often find that students are a lot more focused, so they aren't having to rely on other substances to help them focus. And then do you have a family history of risks such as diabetes, heart disease, cancers, things like that? You'll definitely want to pay attention to your physical activity there. And you can see that in the picture, like this lady is happy, she's walking her dog, feeling good, has a mood boost, as well as like she's happy with how she looks when she's exercising. The dog is happy as well. And then walking your dog, you don't have to go run a marathon. You can walk a dog and still get your social activity as well as that boost in confidence. Okay, reducing risks. The main three that your textbook talks about is prevention, staying informed, and abstaining from risky behavior. So prevention, wear your helmet, whether it's skateboarding, riding your bike, rollerblading, or whether you're in sports. There's a reason that certain sports require helmets. In the sport of track and field, pole vaulting doesn't require a helmet. However, some of the most elite pole vaulters, because they're going, 20 to 30 feet in the air, they don't want to fall and have their career ruined. So a lot of them have started wearing helmets more now. When you see a slippery when wet sign, or we're in Oregon and it's raining and you go out to recess when we get back into it, just be cautious when you're driving or when you're running and the pavement's wet. Stay informed. We keep seeing these three letters pop up for 2020. That's the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It's helping you stay informed. Pay attention to your resources of information. So there's ones that cause fear, that are just looking to get, better numbers. So make sure you're using reliable resources that are validated by science. And then stay informed, visit your doctors regularly. That's eye doctors, dentists, counselors, doctors. I might have said that already, but there's a picture of one of our Lebanon dental offices there. And then abstaining from tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. Okay. Also, the red box there, keep calm and carry on. So abstain from getting overly stressed, manage your stress, use it well. But yeah, and this will all help us with our health triangle. Everything we talk about comes back to finding that balance, okay? Understanding where you are struggling or what areas you could improve in, and then working to find that cohesion or that balance between all three. And these are just some skills to wrap up our thoughts on avoiding risky behavior. So plan ahead. Think about your consequences. Try to abstain from giving in to peer pressure, tobacco, alcohol, other drugs. If you know people who generally partake in activities that you find risky, find ways to avoid doing that. Oh, guys, sorry. My mom said she needed me to go do laundry or something. Use your parents as an outlet and talk to your parents and say, hey, can you be my outlet if I ever encounter, a negative situation where I'm feeling peer pressured to do something? Pay attention what you're doing in the moment. That means looking both ways before crossing the street kind of thing. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't don't turn your music on too loud when you're walking down the street, so that you're aware of people around you, and just know who's passing you by and all that. Know your limits. So if you are a big risk taker, I was in middle school and high school. If you'd asked me to jump off a roof into a pool, I probably would have done it. Nowadays, I have a child and a family to take care of, so my limits are a little bit smaller than they used to be. Be aware of those dangers that may occur for your actions and make the choice for you. Nobody else needs to make your life decisions for you. You have control. You get to decide if it's going to impact you in a positive way or a negative way. Sorry, this one was so long again. Bye, Spartans.